On June 3rd, 2025, while I was sleeping, I had a dream where I was scrolling for YouTube and I came across a particular video. It was a what if video, detailing a hypothetical scenario where Invincible, aka Mark Grayson from the hit comic book and TV series Invincible, was transported to the universe of indie animation series Murder Drones thanks to the machinations of the enemy, Angstrom Levy. And the story of Murder Drones went in a different direction thanks to the presence of a young hero. I don't actually remember what happened in the video, but the concept stuck with me for days. After all, I kept questioning myself, what did Murder Drones and Invincible, two very different shows with different premises, even have in common in the first place? So I decided to make my dream a reality and make this video. So yeah. Okay, so we're gonna get the schematics out of the way. This story will be set during issue 3 of the Invincible comic, or season 2 episode 8 of the show, at which point Mark has been travelling through various dimensions because Angstrom Levy keeps sending him there. As for the Murder Drones timescale, let's just say this takes place at the start of the series, because after all, seeing how one character from a different series getting sewn to another one could lead to a very interesting outcome. Our story begins with our hero, Mark Grayson, otherwise known as flying out of a green portal. He was anxious, having been through several different dimensions in the span of what felt like days. And yet all he could think of was how he was going to help his mother Debbie and his alien half-brother Oliver, as they were currently being held hostage by the crazed Angstrom Levy, who was putting him through the gauntlet of infinite Earths. But this next world was a sorry sight, a frozen wasteland, not unlike the other wastelands Mark has involuntarily visited in his multiverse of madness trip. But what's strange to our hero is that the world he was on had 2 moons, one with rings, not unlike Saturn. Seeking warmth and shelter, Mark scouted the planet pretty frequently, but not before finding what looked to be a reasonably sized outpost with a massive door. I just hope whoever's behind this door is friendly this time, remarked Invincible as he was about to knock on it, when all of a sudden he saw a green flash of energy in the distance. Against his better judgment, Mark raced over to the site, knowing whatever might be there could possibly be in danger. When Mark arrived, what he found was a relatively tame sight compared to everything he's been through. A short, purple-haired robot in dark clothing holding a smoking high-tech rifle with green accents. And in front of her on the ground was a tall, headless white and black robot with a tail and yellow accents. Upon noticing Mark, the purple robot gasped and frantically crawled backwards, the sight of which she had only vaguely seen in boring history classes. The purple robot frantically shouted questions as she aimed the weapon at Mark, despite it having run out of charge. As Mark tried to assure and explain to Uzi, the purple robot, that he wasn't going to hurt her, the tall robot's head began to regenerate and within seconds he was back to normal, but one of his usually yellow circles on his headband was red. On seconds of that happening, Mark flew and pinned the tall robot against the wall, but to his surprise the tall robot didn't fight back. Rather, he seemed happy to explain things to the confused half-Viltrumite. Serial Designation N, the tall robot, explained things to Mark, like how humanity on Copper 9, the planet, went extinct due to a core meltdown, and that he was sent to this outpost with the goal of killing Worker Jones on behalf of the company, J.C. Johnson, in space. Uzi realized that N systems were offline, and as a result, he couldn't tell that she was the same type of robot that he was meant to hunt and destroy. Using this to our advantage, Uzi decided to get her hand, which had been stabbed by N prior to Mark's arrival, healed, and sealed by N's saliva. It makes sense in the show, I promise. And then promptly talked to the two for a bit, learning about the other disassembly drones known as B and J, as well as learning a few things about Mark and his home dimension. When Uzi finds out the landing pod they were in had flight capabilities, she initially asked Mark if he could pick up the pod and fly off Copper 9, but Mark then explains that he couldn't move in space for long distances, which put an end to that plan. When Uzi proposed working with the other worker drones to get the ship up and running, N explained that he wanted to follow his orders, to which Uzi explained that J.C. Jensen would most likely dispose of the disassembly drones after they were done with their job. But before any further conversation could happen, loud banging outside the landing pod could be heard, which N immediately recognized as V and J. But as soon as N turned around, the others were gone, with Mark giving Uzi a piggyback ride on his back while flying. They quickly managed to get back to the bunker in time and fully closed the doors by the time Jay rebooted N's systems, but in the process, Uzi had to explain to her father, who's the head of security by the way, what she was initially doing and why she was with a human, to which Mark interjected that he's actually a half-human. But before any more discussion can be had between father and daughter, the disassembly drones arrived at the locked door, with J and V berating N for letting the two escape. V lamented that it will take them ages to open the doors. Upon seeing the other members of the worker defense force freak out at that prospect, Mark asked what their self-defense weapons even are, but Khan replied that the doors would be enough, to which Mark and Uzi groaned at that prospect. Mark then decided to fight the disassembly drones himself, but not before taking Uzi, Khan, and the other members of the worker defense force to safety. While everyone else agreed, Uzi decided to fight them with Mark. When he argued that the railgun wouldn't work as N simply healed, Uzi retorted that she knew it would work if she didn't miss this one time. At the end of the argument, Invincible said that he'd deal with the disassembly drones himself, but Uzi's knocked out anyways. Once the yell was evacuated, the doors opened and Mark went out ready to take on the disassembly drones. When Uzi was sneaking out, Mark caught her. He berated her for not following orders, to which Uzi responded, "Bite me," that Mark would need backup against the three disassembly drones, and that if she wanted to be lectured, she would have stayed with her dad. Before the argument could continue, the disassembly drones made their presence known by landing in front of the duo. When the smoke cleared, Mark immediately engaged with V and J, not holding back unlike usual because he saw N regenerate, and the fact that they were robots also helped him in that matter as well. Mark kept on his toes, vigorously dodging everything the two threw at him, missiles and bullets doing little to slow Mark down as he weaved through the attacks. While this was happening, Uzi faced N, as Uzi repeatedly dodged N's bullets. She kept trying to hammer in the fact that Jason Jensen saw all the drones as expendable, and that he's not married to them. Mark then managed to cleave Jay in half with one swift chop. While he kept engaging with V, Jay regenerated and managed to sneak Mark with a nanite tail sting. While it didn't really do much damage to him, it was just the opening Jay needed. She then rushed over to Uzi and held her hostage, while she tormented and monologued at Mark for being a so-called superhero who couldn't even sympathetic worker train. N had a face heel turn and attacked Jay with his claws. Mark and Uzi then looked at N take on the other two drones, shrugged at each other and rushed to help him. Mark assisted N with taking down V, with the other two overpowering the disassembly drone with relative ease, and ending the fight with Mark punching a hole for V. But I was surprised to see something unusual in her body, something that resembled an organic heart inside her. While this was happening, Jay attempted to rush into the skirmish, but Uzi timed a railgun blast right and obliterated Jay to smithereens. With the fight done, Mark, Uzi, and N took V back to the pod, with Mark wrapping a large sheet of mail around her, for some more potential answers to their questions. Also, upon looking for Jay's corpse and finding organic components, Mark started to question what was even going on in this place. Just for safety, they quickly flew to the nearest sun, threw Jay's remains there, and regrouped with Uzi and N. However, on the way to the pod, Uzi began to notice a strange symbol manifest in one of her eyes. Mark then formally introduces himself as Invincible to the worker drones of Copper 9, and tells them his situation and basically becomes a protector of sorts. Mark's presence in the story basically means that Uzi doesn't go on a kill all humans kick or do a self-exile. However, Mark is pretty cautious around N because he doesn't fully trust him or know what's going on, and as a result there's a sort of tension between the two. The following day, various students in Uzi's school start going missing, and upon seeing the missing students posters, Uzi and Mark want to investigate the matter, but Khan decided to force Uzi to go to the upcoming prom, so Mark elected to interrogate N and V while Uzi was occupied. Upon arriving at the pod, Mark learns that N basically did nothing, but V showed interest in killing everyone at the prom, which obviously enraged Mark. N backed up Mark by explaining that V was obviously hiding something important from him, to which V makes a move, freeing herself from the metal girder with her acid, decapitating N and engaging Mark for a rematch. Meanwhile, the scenes with Uzi, Doll, and Lizzie go similar to the show, with Doll's placing Messi and her parents being dead. However, Uzi overhears something sort of different. No one will know she's gone, just do everything and alerting V and the human. However, as the skirmish in the sky continued, Mark had the advantage with V constantly weaving and dodging, but Mark was riding on her tail, so V decided to change tactics and fly to the school. When V and Mark crashed into the place, they quickly fought or crawled across the area before crashing into the hall. It turned out that the prom had just started and Doll had started playing a little bit early. As soon as Lizzie gave a thumbs up to the DJ that totally existed in the original show, they started playing music at a high frequency, which turned out to have a violent effect on Viltrumites. It appears that V noticed that Mark had super senses during the fight, so she concluded that super high frequency sound could do some damage, and she told Lizzie that, who didn't tell Doll that. By the way, like, V was in contact with Lizzie, like, at one point in the show, yeah. While Mark was violently retching in pain on the ground, the early prom queen ceremony began. Since the other candidates were either dead or forfeited, V was honored by Lizzie and won by default. As Mark and Khan tried to escape through the door, Doll used weird abilities with symbols not unlike the ones manifesting in Uzi to melt it shut. As V was about to give a speech, Doll initiated a trump card and began using these same abilities to tear V apart. As this was happening, she turned to Mark, who was getting up from the floor, and said these words in Russian: "Stay out of this one." As this happened, N and Uzi jumped from the roof and landed on a prom stage. As soon as they saw Mark struggle to walk, they went to his aid, helping him up. As V was being pulled apart by Doll, the trio contemplated what to do, but not before stopping the song that was hurting Mark's eardrums from playing.
Ultimately, they decided to help out V. Mark rushed in, picked up Doll by a leg, and threw her out of the building. When V tried to get up, Uzi aimed a railgun at her and told her to play nice. But just as this was happening, Uzi began to display the weird symbols again, and before she knew what was happening, she developed weird abilities similar to Doll. The first thing Uzi did with these abilities was to fix the doors, thus helping everyone else escape. While this was happening, in the skies, Mark questioned Doll on what was happening, and she told him what she knew about her situation. How her parents were killed by V, about her solver abilities, and how Uzi was seeming to manifest them as well. After some further communication, Mark seemed to have convinced Doll to form an alliance with Uzi, N, and begrudgingly V. The following day, Mark and Doll then regrouped with the Yellows and told everyone what was going on, and after talking to Khan, who knew about an old place his wife Nori and Doll's mum used to do research at, the gang decided to go there for more clues, with Mark flying the bus they were on there. Upon arrival, the gang investigated the area, Uzi in particular finding a key bug and a few haunting papers, but in the process her powers began to get weirder, and after a panic meltdown, she began to envelop in a cocoon. Meanwhile, the key bug scattered it off, but it was found by Mark, who then showed his findings to the gang, and as they were about to search for Uzi, they all ran into a regenerated J and Tessa Elliott, a human who knew N, J, and V in the past. Upon seeing them both, Mark was surprised to find another human in this world. Before any more questions could be asked, Doll went rogue and took the key bug and vanished, leaving into the hole where the lab was. Tessa then sent Jay off to guard her ship and proposed the gang to all go into the lab and leave Uzi, but Mark interjected and told her that Uzi was clearly going through something not unlike what he was going through, but not exactly similar, but he wasn't going to leave her in trouble. N elected to go with Mark as well, and so they compromised, with Tessa and V going into the lab and Mark and N going to find Uzi, but with a 15-minute time limit. After the gang split up, Mark and N quickly found Uzi, whose silver powers had her mutated with organic wings and a tail. She then flew towards N, but Mark protected him and the three began to tussle in the skies, with N and Mark trying to talk some sense into crazed Uzi. Meanwhile at the labs, V and Tessa made their way to the entrance, which they found littered with disassembly drone corpses. As Tessa was about to call Jay, Mark and N for help, she was caught with a rope and was dragged away. V attempted to follow her, but she came across a baby drone. Just as that happened, an EMP knocked V out cold. Back to the skies, the trio were able to talk some sense into Uzi, and in the process they all talked about their problems with each other. Mark about his recent encounter with his dad, Uzi about the solver program taking her over, and N about how he wanted to know why V was keeping secrets with him. The trio of them resolved to finish this and all flew towards the labs together. Upon arriving, Mark, using a superhero, quickly found that Tessa and V were being held captive by two crazed drones. On the way there, they came across a horde of sentinels, raptor-like drones who roam the labs, armed with forward lights which can boot loop any drone that came their way. There was just one problem though, they didn't catch for a half Ultramite. Mark fought his way towards V and Tessa, finding it remarkably easy, but they didn't really put up a fight. Something he found interesting. There was no time to dwell on that. The trio of them burst through the doors, only to find Alistair on the floor, and Tessa and V waiting for them. Tessa joked that you took way longer than 15 minutes, but upon seeing how Uzi was mutated, V was ready to kill her. After a brief skirmish in the office of Mark and N, V explained the story of Sin to them. How years ago, a worker drone, Dark Disposal, became a zombie drone, which is essentially a worker drone which didn't get terminated properly, and was adopted by Tessa to work in their family's mansion. How Tessa then realized that something was off about Sin and tried to lock her in the basement. How she knew something bad happened with Sin and how it was manifesting in Uzi. The gang all then proceeded their way through the building, going down a hallway and reaching the location of the secret elevator. While this was happening, Uzi and N held hands. Mark took upon this and smiled, secretly yearning for something like this. Upon entering the area, they came across Doll, who appeared to be boot-looped or holding the key bug. Upon seeing this, Mark immediately knew something was happening. At the same time, Uzi's silver powers were immediately starting to go weird, as she accidentally turned some objects that were around her into weird flesh-like things. While everyone else was arguing over what to do, V and Tessa suggested to terminate Uzi and then trying to get Mark to argue with Uzi. Mark decided to speak aloud. He voiced all his concerns. I wanted to get back to his home dimension. I wanted to save his family from Angstrom Levy. And now he wanted to end all the compromised problems today, and he certainly wasn't the only one to do so. As he finished his rant, Doll suddenly materialized in front of the gang. She then gave Mark the key bug, along with these words: I trust your judgment, so let's hope you're right. Mark then placed the key bug onto the platform, and the secret lift then dropped down. The gang then all went into the elevator and waited for it to reach the location. On the way there, V remarked that Mark had just lifted the elevator himself for a quicker arrival. Soon, with a ding, the lift reached the location in the mine shafts. As the gang walked to the location, Uzi's eyes started to glow yellow, and before anyone knew what was going on, she was fully taken over by the Absolute Solver, an eldritch abomination which manifests in damaged AI. While N and V fought her, Tess uses some opportunity to run, but Mark and Doll quickly caught up, with Mark pinning her to a wall. With nowhere else to run, Tess suddenly teleported away from Mark and Doll. The next thing Mark knew, he and Doll up against something strange and sinister. Back to V and N, they were clearly losing the fight against Silver Uzi, just barely avoiding all the knolls and the black hole she was throwing at them. N was holding back in fear of killing Uzi, but V did not want to take any chances, so the two were arguing while trying to survive Silver Uzi's attacks. However, whilst that was all happening, what looked like a disembodied heart watched the Silver Uzi fight from a short distance and proceeded to make its way to V and N, who were just about to fully take out Silver Uzi. The heart then used its abilities of its own to neutralize the two and made its way towards Uzi. But to the shock of V and N, the heart started muttering things about staying away from her daughter and husband, to which N could immediately tell that the heart was Uzi's mother. Just as that happened, Uzi was brought back to normal, scared and frightened of what just happened, but there was no time to dwell on that because Mark and Dog caught up with the gang, who were being pursued by Sin. As the group began to explain things to each other while fleeing from Sin, Nori realized that Sin was trying to reach the cathedral in distance, but in particular was the place which was exercised years ago, crucifix living USB. In an attempt to take over her body. Since it was still there, Mark realized what he had to do and flew straight towards the cathedral. Upon reaching there, he quickly grabbed the patch, but as he did so, it disintegrated in his hands, and before he knew it, he was stabbed in the chest by two organic-looking claws. As it turned out to be an illusion trap set by Sin, who then promptly destroyed the real patch right in front of Mark. She then lifted and held Mark off the ground, and as he was struggling, she thanked him for making things easy for her, and assured him that he would have made a great host for the solver if he wasn't drowned. Before she could tear her in half, two symbols appeared in her claws and proceeded to sever them, freeing Mark. Uzi, Doll, and N had arrived in the nick of time, ready to end this day of terror. As the group engaged with Sin, Doll used her surroundings and threw what she could at Sin, but the Eldritch drone was able to counter them by turning them to organic mass. She then attempted to take over Uzi again, but this time she resisted, and turned something in all of her own, which Sin then absorbed and rejected the gang. Doll used her telekinesis to hold it in the air, which detonated it. And then flew around and shot with Sin, but she deflected him. Mark then flew in the way of the bullets and they ricocheted off his body. Outside the cathedral, Jay tried to come to Sin's assistance, but V intercepted, leading to a clash in the sky between the two, similar to the original timeline. Amongst the confusion, Sin attempted to go to inside the core of Copper 9 with the intent to fully destroy the planet, so she tried to jump down the hole in the cathedral, but Mark, Uzi and N went down after her, with Doll staying behind in case the worst happened. While they were free-falling, N nervously asked Uzi if they were a thing in case they didn't make it out, which Uzi confirmed that to be the case. As the heartfelt moment was happening, Mark caught up with Sin, and as the two traded blows, with Sin repeatedly teleporting, Mark weaving and catching up. Uzi then caught up with Mark, and the three then all attacked Sin simultaneously. The gang then all nearly made it to the core of Copper 9. Uzi flashed some granite surrounding materials, and the four started their final clash. N and Mark went left and right around Sin and attacked her in quick succession, while Uzi sent a rock to magic and threw a null at her, who then threw one back. As smoke rose, Uzi rushed in with a pickaxe and dug into what looked like Sin. As Uzi and Mark were stunned, Sin snuck up behind them and was ready to strike, but Mark took the blow. Just as that happened, Uzi held Sin while Mark threw a heavy punch at Sin's head, obliterating it. While Sin's body was attempting to regenerate, it rushed over to Uzi, but she then dug her hand to Sin's core heart and tore it out. Uzi then used Null to cut a small hole through Copper 9, but in the process for the sun to shine, which incinerated Sin's heart, and in the process opened a black hole which made everything monochrome. During a brief struggle in the center, Uzi in desperation ate what was left of Sin's core, and as a result, Sin fell into the ground and disintegrated. As that was happening, the floor everyone was fighting on fell apart, so Mark quickly flew everyone to safety on the surface. As Mark and Doll regrouped and Uzi and recovered, everything else seemed to sort itself out. V had beaten Jay a while ago and was impatiently waiting outside the cathedral. As the gang all escaped Captain Fever Labs, a green portal opened up, a familiar but sinister sight for Mark. He then knew what he had to do, but not saying goodbye to his new friends. N gave him a hug, Uzi a high five, told him he wasn't bad for a human, Doll a handshake, and V a salute. Mark then flew into the port ready to take on Angstrom Levy, see what else he was willing to throw at him, and he was going to save his family no matter what. Meanwhile, back in the Middle Jones dimension, his gang were making their way back. Nori caught up with them, asked what she missed, and asked where Mark went. To Uzi replied with, "It's a long story, but wherever Mark went, hopefully he can live up to his name as..."
And that's it for today's What If. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to subscribe, like, and share with notifications on and all that YouTube stuff. Thank you. Peace out. Bye.